The next thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare the torque tube that goes inside of the tail boom for installation. Now what we have here is there's a bearing that goes in the middle and the little rubber piece that goes over the top. I've slipped this little rubber piece over the top so that we're ready to lock it down. What we're going to do is we're going to place this in a position and lock it down with blue Loctite. We don't want to put it exactly in the middle though, because if we do that, what will happen is if a vibration sets up on one side of the bearing, it's going to be the same frequency on the other side. So we're just going to offset it about 10 millimeters to either side, front or the rear, so that we don't get that kind of a resonance. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center point on the torque tube. And so now I know where the middle part is. And once I find where the middle part is, I'm going to go 10 millimeters to one side and just mark it with something I can see. Next, we're going to apply a bit of blue Loctite, or green Loctite if you wish. Now I even heard you can use CA glue for this. And we're going to apply it around where we made our mark. Don't need too much. You don't want any to get inside of the bearing. And then we're going to wipe away any of the extra stuff we have. And then we'll slide the bearing right over top, and we'll sit and we'll let that set. Once it's set, we can install it into the tail boom. We can prepare the tail boom for installation by putting our servo mounts and our push rod guides onto the tail, and then we'll be ready to install the whole thing as our next step. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place the torque tube into the tail boom shaft here. And what I've done is I've put a little bit of lubricant into the shaft, and I'm going to put some around the actual rubber here, just so it'll slide into the shaft. We need to push it in there somehow. You can use whatever you want, but I've got the tail boom of a 450 size helicopter, which fits over the torque tube and inside of the tail boom quite nicely, and I'm going to slide it in there. So what we're going to do is insert this, carefully push it in, and then we'll just put it down and position it using the tail boom shaft of the 450 helicopter here. We should feel it come to the end, and make sure we don't want to break that bond. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so we've got the torque tube mounted with the bearing holder into the tail boom. We've got our servo mounts and our push rod guides on there. What we're going to do now is install the tail boom into the tail boom holder. Make sure that we've got the slot on the left-hand side. This the tail rotor shaft will go off to the right, and then we'll just insert it in. What we're going to do is we're going to push it in and until it goes all the way. Then we're going to back it off a bit. We want a little bit of play with the tail boom holder. So I'm in all the way now. It's not going to go any further, so I'm just going to back it off so that the boom has a little bit of play and there's not a lot of tension on there. And then all we need to do is tighten down tail boom holder screws, and that step is done. Okay, we've got the tail boom installed and the torque tube. What we're going to do now is assemble the blade holders and the pitch slider. As you can see, the pitch slider has a couple of screws with the bearings that go in it, and we're going to put those through and just screw them on to the connectors on the blade holders. And once we have that assembled, we'll assemble it all together onto the tail. Alright, once we've got the tail rotor blade holder assembly screwed to the pitch slider, as you can see, what we're going to do now is just attach it to the helicopter. Just slide it on and make sure that you go through the non-threaded hole once you put it through here. And there is a little index mark on the tail rotor shaft. What we're going to do is move that up, and then we'll line up the little hole that we're going to put our set screw in. I'm going to apply a little bit of blue Loctite to that, then we'll screw it down. So the next thing we need to do is install the tail control arm, and what we're going to do is just screw that down and apply a little Loctite to the bolt. Make sure you've got washers on either side of the control arm to prevent it from binding. We'll get our proper sized hex driver, and we'll start screwing it down. Now we have to make sure that the little control ball on the tail slider goes through the control arm. So as you can see, this little thing there has to go through the hole in the control arm. So we'll just make sure that we line those up when I'm securing this down. Alright, from this point in, it's all about the finishing touches. Just the last little bits of assembly, and most of them are pretty straightforward. I haven't filmed them because they're that simple, but what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about what's left and what you need to do. First of all, the tail rotors, they just bolt on. There's no thread lock needed. There's your locking nuts. And then we put the tail feathers and boom mounts on here. Again, these are into plastic. These washers. Just make sure that the horizontal stabilizer here is horizontal. So line it up with the fuselage. This just bolts on to the spots on the tail. That'd be the vertical stabilizer. We've got the anti-rotation bracket here, and that hooks in with the canopy retaining bolts. There's a threaded screws without a head that thread into the anti-rotation bracket, and then with a little bit of Loctite you can screw the canopy retaining bolts right here onto them, and that just holds that whole system all together. We've also got the motor mount. A couple of points on the motor mount. Make sure that you put the pinion on first and you line up the grub screw with the indentation on the motor. Otherwise the motor can give way and you can be doing your first unplanned auto rotation. And then the motor mount bolts in with some Loctite. Same thing with the motor. Make sure you get a good mesh so it's not too tight, but the teeth are getting a good full grip of the main gear there. We've got the servos on them. Servo mounting is going to be different based on what servos you get, and so there's all sorts of mounting hardware that comes with the kit. So have a look at the instructions and select the mounting system that works best for your helicopter. Same thing with the tail servo. One thing I'll mention about the tail servo is I like to have everything nice and centered. There's some schools of thoughts on this about having the tail rotor set one way or the other. I let the gyro take care of that. Set this up vertically. Okay, so the arm that the controller attaches to is going straight up and down. Then we want to make sure that the arm on the control rod is at 90 degrees, and that should bring our tail rotors to 90 degrees as well. Okay, and once that's all set up, then your gyro will take care of keeping the tail straight. A couple other details. I've got the speed controller set up on the side here. Depending on the weight and balance, I may move this forward and move it underneath the battery mount. Make sure receiver is a good distance away from your speed controller, so there's no electrical interference. Gyro will generally sit on top here. I don't know of any other place that people mount them, but any horizontal surface I suppose will be fine. And of course the rotor blades just go on. Make sure that they're the correct direction. Other than that, we're pretty much done here. As always, make sure you don't have loose wires. For the most part, mine's set up pretty ugly, but at the very least, nothing is going to be swinging around to either get caught in the gears or to cause a swinging motion that the gyro is going to have to fight. So just make sure that that's the case. And that's pretty much it. That's the completed helicopter.